Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Readout. Today we are checking out People of Reddit. Story 1. When everything is a priority, nothing is. I work in human resources in a highly regulated industry. I support 12 different departments managed by 5 different directors. Onboarding an employee, from start to finish, takes me about 2.5 hours. If people complete the steps as outlined, I can do it a little bit at a time, e.g. complete the application and I can run your initial background checks. Complete tax and employment paperwork, I can get the payroll shell set up. Get your doctor to sign off on your medical form and I can do an evaluation of your fitness for work, and the final steps can be done in 10 minutes. Most directors understand this and encourage their applicants to get everything to me and respond to things in a timely manner. One director, John, has never grasped this concept. If his employees aren't ready to start, he calls me. If someone didn't complete their paperwork, he calls me. If someone says they did everything to start, he calls me. Typical conversation. John, what's holding up Bob Smith for the Synergy team? Me, it looks like he never sent in his license or filled out the I-9. What did he say when you spoke to him? John, I haven't spoken to him. That's why I'm calling you. He needs to start, this is a priority, please follow up with him. As you may have inferred, onboarding is one part of my job. I have a lot of other duties, but when someone is ready to go, I make sure that they get done as soon as possible. With John, however, no matter where someone is in the process, it's priority 1 rush. There is no phrase that can make me instantly angry like priority 1 rush, because it's lost all meaning for me. John and I share the same boss, Paul, and Paul had repeatedly told John that he is not to harass me, he needs to understand I have other departments to support, and that by demanding everything take top priority, including files that are nowhere near completion, he's taking away from actual priorities. John has promised to stop, but then goes back to it a week later saying, but we need him to start. It has to be a priority. Many of these take the form of emails at 4:58 p.m. saying, George is all set to start. I've told him that he can come in at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Please make sure all of his accounts and equipment are ready for him. This is a priority 1 rush and must be completed. So after the last stunt, I told my boss what I'd love to do. He, surprisingly, told me to go ahead and he'd be fine with it. The other day I had a new employee send me his medical file at 2 p.m. He was to work in one of our labs on a project. I was in the middle of review when another applicant emailed that he had finished his paperwork and CC'd John. This individual was to work in the office in a clerical job. Before I could even respond, John replied to all and included 2 other directors saying that the man would be starting tomorrow, to get all of his accounts set up, and that this was priority 1. I replied to John, CC'd my boss, and told him I'd make it priority 1. So I immediately stopped working on the scientist's file and began reviewing the clerical employee's file. It was clear that he did not have everything he needed to start, and I was about to send an email telling him as much when another email came in informing me that another applicant for one of our lab teams, a technician, had filled out his I-9. My phone rang and it was John. You can guess where this is going. Sean, the manager, needs this person to start tomorrow. It's critical priority 1 that this person have everything set for tomorrow. I asked him to please send me an email, followed the same protocol as before, dropped the clerical file without another word, and moved on to the technician. As I was in the middle of doing the checks for the technician, the front desk called to say that one of our new hires, a custodian, was having trouble completing the application and that he'd like to have someone sit with him and help him. Knowing how this would play out, I suggested that she call John. Not even a minute late, John was on the phone with me telling me how urgent it was that this person start immediately, how it was my responsibility to provide this support, and how this should be treated as priority 1 rush. I apologized to John, told him I hadn't realized the urgency and said I would sit with the gentleman and help him. That's exactly what I did. I sat down with him, walked him through everything, and we submitted the application together. Though, as he had no physician's clearance, he was nowhere near being close to able to start. By that point it was 5:15 p.m. I sent an email to John letting him know that I had assisted the new hire one-on-one as per his instructions of Priority 1 Rush and CC'd our boss on it. The next day my phone began blowing up. A scientist showed up at the lab and there was no equipment for him and they didn't know he was coming. A clerical employee had no accounts and no access to the file rooms, a technician was not set up in the system, and none of them existed as an employee with clearance. In every case my response was the same: my apologies, I was in the middle of processing the file when John demanded I drop it to address a much more important matter. Let me transfer you to him. John showed up at my office screaming and demanding to know why things weren't done. I looked at him surprised and told him that I was following his instructions and if something was a Priority 1 rush then it took precedence over everything else. He asked if I seriously thought that helping the custodian fill out his application took priority over getting equipment for a new scientist on a time-critical project. I replied, honestly, no. It seemed like a pretty bad decision, but when you said it was a priority, I trusted your judgment and your decision figuring you knew something I didn't. He called me a moron and walked away. I later found out that he demanded my termination for the stunt. My boss told him that I had done exactly what he asked and that the blame was entirely on him. He told him he could either trust my judgment to prioritize what needs to get done, or he could deal with the consequences of me following his instructions. Privately, my boss asked me not to do it again because his boss was furious over the whole thing and he had to admit he sanctioned it to stop my head from rolling. I'd like to say it stopped, but Priority 1 rush is still one of John's favorite expressions, though thankfully it's been coming up much less frequently. Story 2. Can't move your rubbish here, let me help you. First posted in r/malicious compliance. One of my neighbors, UK, dug out the concrete from his fence and left it in my garden. The bottom of his garden butted onto the side of mine, without asking permission. Okay, no problem, a bit pissed off, but hey, I could see all the posts and panels etc. so knew he was fitting a new fence in the next few days. He then erected a nice new fence, but forgot to take the concrete footings back. They were a hazard to my 2 small children, so it stopped them playing in the garden. Asking nicely and gently reminding him didn't work and they were too heavy for him to move alone. His BIL was unavailable and anyway, they're not causing any harm. 2 months later, with the help of a few friends, I moved them onto his driveway in the middle of the night, blocking in his car. Coincidentally, it was the same day he was leaving early for a holiday abroad. Story 3. Revenge on an ex-friend. About 15 years ago, I met a gal through mutual friends who we'll call Wanda. She was the center of a tight-knit group, and she was always planning parties, dinners, etc. for everyone. She was very generous and social. She and I grew very close, in part because we were both overweight and we decided to be workout buddies. We went to the gym 4 to 5 days a week together, and I considered her one of my best friends. Wanda never seemed to lose any weight, and she was noticeably frustrated when I went down a few sizes. All bodies are different, and this just didn't do anything for her. Without telling anyone, Wanda got lap band surgery. She was not proud, but I was supportive. Wanda changed a lot. As the pounds dropped off, she stopped working out with me. She met some younger, thinner friends that she preferred to hang out with, and they'd shop at stores that Wanda and I had never been able to go to. I was happy she'd reached her body goals, but she didn't treat me the same. She acted disgusted by my appearance, and criticized my eating habits. She was generally cold towards me, even though I hadn't done anything to her. One day, she ended the friendship out of the blue. She only gave me tenuous reasons, but by then she was such a different person that it didn't matter. I would have let this go, except I learned through mutual friends that she had been bad-mouthing me for months. Everything from how I ate too much at the dinners she'd organized to how I was jealous of her to how my clothes were, to her, laughably ugly. Here's where the petty revenge happened. I had been attending her parties and dinners for years, and I had been dubbed the unofficial photographer. I had taken hundreds of photos, which made up about 90% of Wanda's tagged photos on Facebook. I deleted every photo of her post-lap band surgery. Every photo of her from every event where she had acted better than me and talked about me behind my back. Gone. All the other event photos were there, but she was noticeably absent from them. The only tagged photos of her were from when she was bigger than me, at a weight where she hated her body was actually a decent person. I hope she eventually realized that being thin didn't make her a better person, but in reality, she was probably just embarrassed that all the good pictures were gone. Edit for everyone asking, this happened years ago, but since then she has only gained back a little bit of the weight. She did lose all her friends from that time, both the old and new. I sometimes see her around town and she pretends not to see me at all. Story 4. My roommate stole my garlic salt, so I threw her license away. Throwing away garlic salt, the ultimate crime. I saw a post similar to this and I thought I'd share my similar story. While living with 4 females, including my girlfriend. This is a house where everyone was in a sorority aside from my girlfriend and I. To add, I was nice to them obviously, we all had a few board games nights and so forth. Well, eventually, another girl's, L, BF, D, moved in for a short while. That was fine until it became permanent and he refused to pay any bills. We just wanted a split between who was in the house and asked nicely about it. Eventually, I was confronted and called a crackhead by L. This is when I became resentful. For context, I'm in the military and was in the best shape of my life at the time, not a crackhead lol. We became the only people to clean the house as it was just my GF, L, D, and myself as the other girls left for the summer. I would be blamed for hair clogging the sink, while I cleaned it without being asked to be kind, it was full of long hair. Eventually, L asked us to pay more in water, because we showered more than her. L is a heavier woman and we showered daily. I will admit that I laughed and agreed, if she wants to stink then go ahead. One day, we cleaned the house and L subsequently threw a fit as she thought we stole a box of brownies, $1.49, from her. In retaliation, she stole my container of garlic salt. So, as I cleaned the house one day, I found L's license in the couch. Immediately threw it in the bottom of the trash can which was placed on the curb next day for pickup. The local DMV is an all-day event and the line is outside of the building, during summer. Additional info, GF was completely okay with cutting ties. I really focused on not ruining her friendships and was willing to bite my tongue. L backed into my car and I allowed her to pay me cash rather than insurance, which was delayed for a month or more. She ran into a concrete wall and tried to drive 50 miles home with her radiator leaking and blew her engine up, after I told her this would happen. I'm prob the but this is petty revenge so I thought I'd share lol. That's all for today, please don't forget to like and subscribe.